I thought going home for a few days would be the perfect escape, a break from the stress, the noise, and everything that had been weighing on my mind. But I was wrong, because when my little brother caught me in the act, I never imagined my quiet vacation would spiral into something deeper, more intense, and far more complicated than I ever expected. I hadn't even planned on going home. Staying in my apartment, soaking in the rare silence away from my chaotic college life, seemed like the better option. But then Mom called. Her voice was warm, layered with that guilt-laced softness only a mother can pull off. "It's been months since you visited," she said. "Your brother keeps asking about you." That part caught me off guard, my little brother asking about me. We weren't exactly distant, but time had made us strangers in ways we never talked about. So, with a duffel bag lazily thrown over my shoulder, I walked back into the house I grew up in. I inhaled that familiar scent, wood polish, Mom's soft floral air freshener, and something faintly like warm bread. Everything looked the same, but something felt different. Maybe it was me. "Look who finally decided to come back," my brother William said, barely glancing up from his phone. His voice was deeper now, more grounded, carrying something new I couldn't quite place. He wasn't a kid anymore. Yeah, I muttered, dropping my bag near the stairs. "Thought I'd bless you all with my presence." He snorted but didn't push. Still, his eyes followed me as I moved. There was something in his gaze, a quiet intensity, maybe curiosity. Maybe it was just the usual awkwardness of two brothers who hadn't shared space in a while. Maybe I was overthinking it. Dinner felt the same as always. Mom chatting about neighborhood gossip, Dad barely looking up from his plate, and William tossing in the occasional sarcastic comment. But I could feel it, his gaze flickering toward me when he thought I wasn't looking. And that feeling, an odd awareness, settled in my bones. It lingered as I stepped into my old bedroom. The room hadn't changed except for a fine layer of dust on the shelves. It was like stepping into a memory that no longer belonged to me. Being back surrounded by bits of my teenage life, posters I never took down, books left unfinished, a bed that somehow felt smaller. It left me with a strange blend of nostalgia and unease. A soft knock pulled me from my thoughts. "You staying long?" William's voice. I turned, leaning against the dresser. "Not sure. Maybe a week. Just needed a break from everything." He lingered in the doorway, arms crossed, an unreadable look on his face. "College that bad?" I shrugged. "Just loud sometimes. Needed to reset." He nodded slowly, but his eyes didn't move. And in that moment, standing there in the quiet, I realized just how much he'd changed. The kid I left behind wasn't a kid anymore. There was something different in the way he looked at me. Not like an annoying little brother. More like I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The tension wasn't sudden, but it was there. It crept in slowly, unspoken and quiet, settling between us over the next few days. It was in the way we moved past each other in the hallway, close enough to brush shoulders even when there was plenty of room. It was in the way his eyes lingered, too observant, too aware. I started noticing things I hadn't before. His voice had deepened. There was a calm confidence in the way he stood, different from the kid I remembered. I shouldn't have thought twice about it, but once the awareness settled in, it wouldn't go away. One evening we were in the living room, just the two of us. Mom and Dad had gone out. The TV played in the background, some forgettable show neither of us was really watching. The silence had weight. Days of unspoken tension made even the stillness feel charged. "Do you ever miss being home?" he asked, breaking the quiet. I glanced over, caught off guard. "Sometimes," I said, "but you get used to living on your own. It's different." He nodded slowly, his fingers drumming lightly against the armrest. "I bet you get up to a lot living by yourself." There was nothing wrong with the words, but the way he said them made my stomach twist. Playful, but with something else under the surface. I forced a laugh. Yeah, sure. Wild parties, all-night study sessions, classic college life. William chuckled, shaking his head. That's not what I meant. My pulse skipped, just for a second. Then what did you mean? I asked, keeping my voice even. He tilted his head like he was considering how much to say, then shrugged casually. Nothing, just wondering. I exhaled slowly and turned back to the screen, pretending to focus, but I could feel his gaze on the side of my face, watching. I should have brushed it off, let it fade, but I didn't. Later that night, lying in my old bed, I stared at the ceiling, wide awake. The past few days replayed in my mind like a loop. The way he looked at me, how his voice dropped just a little when he spoke, how he lingered like he was waiting for something. I turned on my side, trying to shake the thoughts. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe the tension wasn't even real, but a part of me knew it was. And the worst part? I didn't really mind it. The days moved forward, but something had changed. Maybe it was just the awkwardness of reconnecting after so long. Maybe it was nothing. But something in the air had shifted, and I wasn't the only one who felt it. William and I had always gotten along fine, but now, spending so much time together again, things felt different. Small, seemingly innocent moments started to feel charged. At first it was subtle, sitting a little closer than needed on the couch, brushing past each other in narrow hallways, even when there was space to avoid it. I didn't know if I was imagining it or if he was just being careless. But every time our arms grazed or our knees bumped under the dinner table, I felt a flicker of awareness. Not discomfort exactly, just unfamiliarity. I told myself it was nothing, that I was just being overly sensitive because I wasn't used to having him around anymore. But then he started saying things. You're looking different these days, he said one afternoon, his tone casual but his eyes steady. Yeah? In what way? I asked, playing it off. He shrugged, lips twitching into something unreadable. I don't know, just different. He didn't explain, but it stuck with me. Then came the long looks, the kind that lasted just a second too long. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me with that unreadable expression, and instead of looking away, he just didn't. I didn't say anything, pretended not to notice. But at night, lying in bed, it played back in my mind. Those glances, the strange shift between us. It felt ridiculous, like I was projecting something that wasn't even there. Until the night I froze. It happened in the kitchen. He was reaching for something above the counter, and I moved past to grab a glass. Our shoulders brushed, no big deal, but his hand grazed my waist. Barely there, just a second too long. I stiffened, not in fear, but in confusion. He didn't move right away. His hand hesitated, curled slightly like he wasn't sure what to do. Then he pulled away. Sorry, he muttered, but his voice didn't sound sorry. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. That night, my thoughts raced. Was I overthinking it all? Or had something really shifted? I had always been the older one, the grounded one. But now, it felt like I wasn't in control anymore. Just as I was drifting off, my door creaked open. I turned my head, expecting Mom or Dad, but it was William. He leaned on the door frame, arms crossed, wearing a casual smirk. You look tense. My stomach flipped. I swallowed. What? He tilted his head, stepping inside without bothering to close the door. You've been acting weird lately. I haven't, I said quickly, sitting up straighter. He didn't look convinced. I think you have. Silence stretched. The space between him and the door suddenly felt too open, too heavy. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't just about coming home anymore. It was about figuring out who we'd become. two strangers under the same roof, trying to reconnect, not quite knowing how. He shouldn't have been in my room. Not like that. Not with that look. And yet, I didn't tell him to leave. He stood there for a moment, 1, 2, maybe 5 minutes, watching me, thinking, waiting. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. But he didn't leave empty-handed. He left something behind. Attention. Heavy and constant, threading through every glance, every word, every interaction between us. It wasn't subtle anymore. It was thick in the air, pressing down on me. And William, he wasn't pulling back. If anything, he was pushing forward. It started with small things, standing too close in the kitchen, reaching past me, his hand brushing against my arm like he didn't even notice. Or maybe he did, saying my name differently, slowly, like he was trying to make it mean something more. The smirks, the comments, the way he looked at me. Not like a brother catching up, but like someone waiting for a reaction. Then came the announcement at dinner. Mom and Dad were going away for the weekend. Just a quick getaway, Mom said, smiling. It's been forever since we had some time for ourselves. Dad nodded, eyes on his phone. You boys can handle things, right? Of course, I said quickly, trying to keep my voice even. Across the table, William chuckled, just loud enough for me to hear. When I looked up, he was already watching me, eyes calm, unreadable. Once they left, the house changed. It felt too quiet, too still, like the walls themselves were waiting for something. I tried to distract myself. TV, my phone, anything to keep from spiraling into my own thoughts. But William didn't make it easy. Enjoying the silence? He asked that evening, dropping onto the couch beside me. I shrugged, eyes on the screen. Feels weird. He stretched, arms overhead, his voice light. Guess we'll have to entertain ourselves. Later that night, I went to the kitchen for water. I heard him before I saw him, the soft steps on the tile. What are you doing? I asked, not turning around. Just watching, he said from behind me. I turned. He was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, head tilted slightly, studying me, like I was a puzzle. What? I asked. Nothing, he replied, stepping closer. Not enough to alarm me, but enough to notice. Like he was testing my boundaries. Then he nudged me, light, playful, like kids used to do. You used to be fun, he muttered. That made me face him fully. What's that supposed to mean? His grin widened. Before I could say anything else, he shoved me. Not hard, just enough to throw me off balance. What the hell? I muttered, catching myself. He laughed. You're so serious all the time now. You used to mess around. I rolled my eyes. I'm not wrestling you, William. Scared you'll lose? You wish. The challenge in his eyes was clear, and before I could back away, he lunged. I thought going home for a few days would be the perfect escape. A break from the noise, the pressure, the weight constantly pressing down on me. But I was wrong. When my little brother caught me, just standing there, lost in my own head, I never imagined my quiet getaway would spiral into something so intense, so emotionally tangled. I hadn't even planned to come home. Staying at my apartment, basking in the rare silence away from college chaos, sounded way better. But then Mom called. Her voice was warm, threaded with that guilt-laced sweetness only a mother can pull off. It's been months. Your brother keeps asking about you. That stopped me. William, asking about me. We weren't exactly distant, but time had reshaped us, made us strangers in a way we never really talked about. So, with a duffel bag slung over my shoulder, I stepped back into the house I grew up in. The scent hit me first. Wood polish, Mom's floral air freshener, and something that smelled faintly like warm bread. It was all the same, but I wasn't. Look who finally showed up, William said without looking up from his phone. His voice was deeper now, calmer, controlled. Yeah, I muttered, dropping my bag near the stairs. Thought I'd grace you all with my presence. He snorted but didn't push. Still, I caught the way his eyes tracked me. Sharp, curious, almost unreadable. He wasn't the same kid I remembered. Dinner was as routine as ever. Mom talked about neighbors. Dad barely looked up from his plate. William tossed in the usual sarcastic jabs. But underneath it all, I felt it. Something different in the way he looked at me. A kind of intensity I didn't know what to do with. That night in my old room, I lay awake. Everything was exactly where I'd left it. Dusty books, faded posters, a bed that felt somehow smaller than before. But I wasn't the same person who used to live here. A knock on the door. His voice, more confident than I remembered. "You staying long?" I shrugged. "A week. Just needed to get away." "College that bad?" he asked, lingering in the doorway. "It's just loud, you know? Sometimes you need to breathe." He nodded but didn't leave. Just stood there like he was studying me. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Over the next few days, the tension wasn't immediate. It crept in. Quiet. Subtle. In the way our shoulders brushed in the hallway, the way his gaze lingered a moment too long. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't warm either. It was complicated. We started spending more time together, sitting closer than necessary on the couch, talking late into the night. At first, it felt like reconnecting, but then came the questions. "You've changed," he said one afternoon, voice light but eyes locked on me. "In a bad way?" "No," he replied. "Just different." That word stuck with me. Different. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me, his expression unreadable. I pretended not to notice, but I noticed. Every time. Then Mom and Dad announced they were leaving for the weekend. A quick getaway. "Just the two of you here," Mom smiled. The house felt different without them. Still. Quiet. Too quiet. "You ever think about how weird it is?" William asked, sitting beside me on the couch. "What?" "Being back here, after everything." I didn't answer, just nodded. The silence that followed was heavier than the question. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about who we were, who we used to be, and who we had become. We weren't kids anymore. We were strangers learning to share the same space again. And somehow that felt more unnerving than comforting. One evening in the kitchen, we reached for the same glass at the same time. Our hands brushed. No big deal, just a moment. But neither of us moved away right away. He looked at me, a flicker of something in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or confrontation. "Sorry," he muttered, but it didn't sound like he meant it. The next day, everything felt different, like the air had shifted. Every glance carried weight. Every silence stretched just a little too long. We weren't fighting, we weren't bonding. We were circling each other, emotionally. By the time Sunday rolled around, I wasn't sure what I had come home for anymore. Peace, clarity. But what I found was something far more honest. That time doesn't heal everything. Sometimes it just hides things better. And maybe some things were never meant to be unpacked. A heavy fog settled over my mind and I scrambled for an excuse. Something to say, something to do. But I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. And the worst part, neither did he. He didn't leave, he didn't look away. He didn't react at all. His face was unreadable, his body perfectly still. His hands gripped the doorframe like he was anchoring himself in place. My pulse thundered in my ears. I should have felt embarrassed, ashamed. I should have said something, done anything to break the suffocating silence between us. But I didn't, and neither did he. Seconds dragged on, stretching into what felt like an eternity. Then, after what seemed like a lifetime, William tilted his head slightly. His voice shattered the silence like a blade through glass. "I've heard you do this many times before." A shockwave hit me. I inhaled sharply, my body tensing, my heart pounding in my chest. He said it so casually, as if it were nothing, like it shouldn't make my world spiral into panic. I swallowed hard, struggling to find my voice, but nothing came out. William took a slow step forward, his expression unnervingly calm. He was waiting for my reaction, watching me with an intensity that made my skin burn. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to sit up. "I don't know what you're talking about." William's lips curved just slightly, not quite a smirk, but close. His tone was flat, unreadable. He wasn't teasing, he wasn't angry, he was simply stating a fact. "You don't?" I gripped the edge of the blanket, my knuckles turning white. "How long?" I asked, my voice quieter than I meant. William shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "A while?" The words hit me like a ton of bricks, heavy and undeniable. I had been careless, too comfortable, too used to thinking I was alone. But I wasn't. I never had been. A heat washed over me, but it wasn't from embarrassment. No, it was something else, something deeper, something I couldn't name. William exhaled, watching me for a long, agonizing moment before he finally pushed away from the doorframe. "Well," he murmured, turning as though he was about to leave. But then he paused, glancing over his shoulder. His gaze locked onto mine, something flickering behind his eyes, something unreadable. Then, with the faintest hint of amusement, he said, "Don't stop on my account." And just like that, he was gone. The door stayed open, his words hanging in the air long after he left. I sat there, pulse still racing, body stiff. The warmth in my stomach refused to fade. I should have felt relieved that he was gone, but I didn't. I wasn't sure what I felt. All I knew was that this had changed everything. I sat there in the dark, heart pounding, my mind tangled in thoughts I didn't want to face. William's words echoed in my head, looping over and over, leaving me no room to escape. The words echoed in my mind, a song I couldn't turn off. "I've heard you do this many times before." He had left after saying that, but the air still felt charged with something I couldn't shake. My body was too warm, too restless, like I had been caught in the middle of something I couldn't explain. I ran a hand down my face, exhaling shakily. What the hell just happened? Had I misread everything? Had I really been that careless? This wasn't about carelessness. It was something else. William hadn't just noticed tonight. He had been aware for a while. He had heard me more than once. The realization settled in my stomach like a weight I couldn't lift. The way he had said it, so calm, so steady, almost amused, like he'd been waiting for me to figure it out. I swallowed hard, but before I could even process it, the door creaked. My breath caught in my throat. William was back. He leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, his eyes dark with something unreadable. He didn't speak at first, just stood there watching me, letting the silence stretch between us, tight like a rope pulled to the breaking point. My pulse pounded in my ears. "What?" I couldn't form the words. He finally spoke, his voice low and measured. "You didn't finish." I froze. He stepped inside, slow and deliberate. His expression remained unreadable, but his eyes, they were saying something else entirely. My throat felt dry. I shifted on the bed, suddenly hyper-aware of everything, the sheets slightly disheveled, the heat still lingering in my body, the air thick with something unspoken. William tilted his head, his gaze never leaving me. "I could help if you wouldn't mind." I exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the blanket. "What?" His lips twitched, but he wasn't smirking, not this time. "You heard me," he said quietly. I swallowed hard, but I couldn't respond. "William, don't." He cut me off, his voice quiet but firm. He took another step closer, the space between us shrinking. I could feel the weight of his presence, The way the room had shifted, charged with anticipation. "You think I don't notice?" His voice softened now, almost curious. I shook my head, willing my mind to catch up. "Notice what?" His lips twitched again, a ghost of a smile. "You. The way you react. The way you avoid looking at me too long, like if you do, something might slip." Heat crept up my neck. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" He took another step forward. "Because I think you knew exactly what were you doing this whole time?" My jaw tightened. "William, don't." "Don't?" he echoed, his voice slicing through the space between us. I inhaled sharply. He wasn't playing anymore. The usual smirks, the teasing remarks, those were gone. This was something else entirely. I tried to move, to put space between us, but he stepped into my path, blocking my way. "You don't have to pretend," William said, his voice softer now. "Not with me." I stared at him, my pulse hammering in my ears. This was it, the moment where everything would either unravel completely or change forever. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The tension in the air was thick enough to suffocate us. His eyes searched mine, looking for something, maybe permission, maybe acknowledgement. And for the first time, I didn't look away. William's breath hitched, just barely noticeable. "See," he murmured, "you're not stopping me." I wanted to, but I didn't. In that split second, we both understood something we'd never dared to say aloud. The tension finally snapped. I don't know who moved first. Maybe neither of us did. Maybe we'd always been standing too close, teetering on the edge of something inevitable. The moment was heavy, electric, charged with everything we had been avoiding for days, weeks, maybe even longer. The air between us felt like a live wire, buzzing with unspoken words and emotions neither of us had dared to name. William's breath was shallow now, his chest rising and falling just slightly faster than before. His eyes flickered over my face, searching, hesitating, waiting. I could feel it. The pull, the invisible force that had always been there, growing stronger every time we lingered in the same space. Every time a glance lasted too long. Every time silence spoke louder than words. I should have stepped back. I should have laughed it off, said something to break the tension, to remind us both that this wasn't happening, that it was just our minds playing tricks on us. But I didn't, because it was happening. William swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. "This is crazy," he muttered, barely above a whisper. "Yeah," I said, my voice just as quiet. "I know." And yet, neither of us moved away. The distance between us was nearly gone now, just a breath, a heartbeat, a single thought away from something we couldn't undo. His fingers twitched at his side. It was like he wanted to reach for me but wasn't sure if he should. Hesitation was written all over his face, but so was something else. Something raw, something real. I felt my pulse in every part of my body. I could hear it pounding in my ears, in my fingertips, in my chest. The space between us was suffocating, intoxicating. I took a slow, steady breath, trying to ground myself, but all I could focus on was the warmth radiating from his skin, the sharpness of his gaze, the way his lips parted just slightly, like he was waiting for something, like he was daring me to make the next move. "I don't know what to do with this," he admitted finally, his voice rough, almost strained. Neither did I, but I knew one thing for sure. I didn't want to walk away. William shifted his weight, and for the briefest moment, his fingers brushed against mine. It was barely there, a whisper of contact, but it sent a jolt through me like a spark hitting dry air, igniting something I hadn't realized was flammable. The world around us seemed to slow, the walls of the room closing in, making the moment feel even more suffocating, intensely intimate. His breathing deepened, mirroring mine, matching a rhythm neither of us had set on purpose. I wasn't sure how long we stood there, caught in the storm of everything we weren't saying. But I knew one thing for certain. Neither of us was ready to walk away, not anymore. There was no shame, no disgust. The air between us felt heavier than ever, like we'd stepped past an invisible threshold, and there was no turning back now. I should have felt conflicted. Maybe I did deep inside, but in that moment, caught in the weight of his stare, I didn't stop. I didn't mind. The seconds stretched thick with everything we weren't saying, everything that had been simmering between us for days, weeks, maybe longer. Then a noise, a sharp, unexpected sound from downstairs. My stomach twisted as reality slammed into me like a cold wave. William jerked slightly, his breathing still uneven. His body stiffened as the sound settled between us. For a split second, neither of us moved. We were both frozen in place, like the moment could still hold itself together if we didn't acknowledge the inevitable. For a long moment we stood there, suspended between reality and the storm that had been building inside us. The noise from downstairs still hung in the air, but it felt distant now, irrelevant. The world outside that room, the expectations, the distractions, it all faded into nothing. There was only the two of us, locked in this suspended space, uncertain but undeniable. William's eyes searched mine, and I saw it then, the question that had always been there but never spoken aloud. Neither of us had the answers, but in that moment, it didn't matter. The weight of everything unsaid between us had found its way to the surface, and no matter how much I wanted to push it all back, I couldn't. I started, but the words wouldn't come. He raised a hand just slightly, as if to stop me, but his eyes were soft now, full of something I couldn't name. "We don't need to say anything," he whispered. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the heat of the room and the intensity of his presence sink into me. The uncertainty, the confusion, it all seemed irrelevant now. There was no plan, no clear path forward, but there was something undeniable between us, something real. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid to face it. William stepped closer, the space between us finally disappearing. His breath, slow and steady, mingled with mine. We were right there, on the edge of something, and neither of us was pulling away. The world outside might have continued on, but in that moment there was nothing but the two of us. No distractions, no running away. Just the weight of the silence that we no longer feared. And then, finally, the moment was no longer about hesitation or doubt. It was simply about being. And when I finally let go, when the tension between us broke, it was nothing like I had expected. It was everything we hadn't said, everything we hadn't allowed ourselves to feel, coming together in a single, inevitable moment. No more words, no more questions, just us.